Okay, we get started. I'll call the September 18th, 2014 committee meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to order. My name is Jeff Griggs, and I'm chairman of the commission. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody in the audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn it to mute or to vibrate. If you do get a phone call, I would ask that you would wait till you get out in the hall before you answer that call, and I appreciate that, and we'll all turn ours down as well. There's a tablet that'll be passed around the room in just a second. If you would, we'd like to have a record of everybody that's here today. Please put your name on it, and if you're here representing a group, I'd ask that you put the name of that group out beside your name. At this time, Ms. Hayes, would you call the roll?
Chad Baker.
Here.
Jim Bledsoe.
Here.
Harold Cannon.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Jeff Griggs.
Here.
Connie King. Jeff McMillan.
Here.
Tom Rice.
Here.
Jim Ripley.
Here.
James Stroud.
Here.
Trey Teague.
Here.
David Watson.
Here.
Jamie Woodson. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hayes. I appreciate that. Looking out in the audience, I see that we have Mr. Boyd Barker, Deputy Commissioner of Ag. Glad to have you again today, sir. Is there any announcements that need to be made by the commissioner and staff? All right, no announcements. All right, you all know today is committee day, and that votes taken in committee are non-binding or just recommendations that'll go to the full commission tomorrow. Anyone that wants to address the commission today on a particular subject matter may do so at the time that committee is meeting. I would ask that if you're here and that you want to address the commission, that you would wait till the presentation is over, and if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait to be noticed by the chairman. And once the chairman recognizes you, you can come to the front mic. Also ask that you don't have conversation with anyone in the audience. Don't turn around and have conversation with them. Don't have conversation with the agency making a presentation. Direct your comments and questions to that chairman. Once the conversation gets started, the chairman will allow you to speak to the agency or to the rest of the commission. I know there's several of you who'd like to speak today, and I know we met last month, and it was pretty lengthy, and I thought it was a good meeting, and I think y'all think the same thing too. One thing I'd like to do a little bit different today, if you come up to speak, please let everybody have an opportunity. In other words, don't come to the mic, speak, and go sit down and come back, do it again. Let everybody that wants to speak, speak. And I'm not saying you won't get an opportunity to come back to the mic. Just give everybody a shot at it and then go from there. But it could be lengthy today, and everybody will be heard. And but I appreciate, let's do it in the right way. And I know at the last meeting as well, we had a few in the crowd that was kind of talking at times when other people were. I'm not going to put up with that today. If I hear anybody talking over anybody in the crowd, I'm going to stop and ask you to stop. And hopefully y'all respect us, and I promise you we will respect y'all as well. I mean that. Try to keep your comments as short and relevant as you can. And I, along with the chairman of each committee today, reserve the right to limit comments and discussion, especially in cases of repetition. At this time, I think I will turn it over to Vice Chair of the Wildlife Management Committee, which will be Bill Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got 3 items. Chief Radijak, would you take over with that, please, sir?
Check. There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Cox. I come before the Wildlife Committee to talk about 3 things. We are going to change the agenda slightly. There is a discussion from our partners with Ducks Unlimited, and I'll introduce them after I go over a couple of quick items on the Migratory Bird Report. The reason I come before you today to talk a little bit about migratory birds is we're getting ready to conduct our 2nd annual Sandhill Crane Drawing. And this will take place before the next commission meeting happens, so I just wanted to make all the commissioners and the public aware of how that drawing is going to take place. Give you a brief update on how our dove fields went this year. Opening day was Labor Day, September 1st. Just to give you an idea how well we're doing with our dove seasons and dove fields. And then I will call up our friends and partners with Ducks Unlimited to give you a short presentation. First off, the sandhill crane drawing. This is going to be the second year we will be hunting sandhill cranes, and I just want to give you a little bit of detail about the drawing event. It will take place Saturday, October 18th. We will once again conduct the drawing at the Birchwood Community Center, which is the old Birchwood Elementary School in Birchwood, Tennessee. We'll begin the event at approximately 8 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll conduct registration for approximately 2 hours and then conduct the drawing at 10 a.m. And once again, this will be a handheld barrel type of drawing for these permits. Give you an idea about the drawing requirements. We do require that the people be in person at the drawing event. You cannot have a proxy come and get a permit for you. You have to be there in person. And you also have to have the minimum licensing requirements to hunt waterfowl. So sportsman's license, small game permit, waterfowl permit. You have to be legal to hunt waterfowl with our licensing in order to register for a sandhill crane permit. Bit of information about the permit information. Once again, we're going to go with 400 permits that we're going to release. Each one of those permits will be, the hunter will be allowed to take 3 birds. Now keep in mind, once you receive that permit, that does not allow you to go out and hunt sandhill crane during our season. You must first validate the permit by passing a sandhill crane ID test. What we're going to do this year, as opposed to last year, we're going to go live with that about a week early, before the drawing takes place, to allow any potential hunters of sandhill cranes to get on there and complete that exam and get their test number that they have to then put on the permit if they get drawn for the hunt. I will let you know if there are leftover permits. Last year there was approximately 160 leftover permits. If there are leftover permits this year, they'll be made available the following Wednesday at our regional offices. And those permits, the leftovers, we do allow people to obtain permits by proxy. As long as you have the TWA ID number and those individuals have the proper permits, you can receive extra permits for individuals at that time. One thing that we're very mindful last year is the education aspect of this initial sandhill crane hunt. There's quite a bit of concern about confusion between sandhill cranes and whooping cranes, and so we have created and passed out, and again we'll have these readily available at our sandhill crane drawing, just identifying what is a legal sandhill crane to shoot, as well as the other species that somewhat resemble sandhill cranes. We also are very mindful of that on the permits that the crane hunters, the successful hunters, will receive. It also has down here at the bottom right-hand corner how to identify the sandhill crane to make sure you don't accidentally mistaken it with a whooping crane. One of the things that we're required to do, and we've really got to keep track of harvest. This is a pilot program with the Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a 3-year pilot project, and so they really want to know exact numbers on how many birds are harvested, but we're also collecting information on how many birds the hunter are seeing, if they're seeing whooping cranes, just a whole bunch of extra information that we're collecting to really make sure that we do a good job monitoring this initial hunt. So with that, does anyone have any questions regarding how this sandhill crane drawing will go?
No questions, go.
All right, moving on, as I stated earlier, September 1st was the beginning of the 2014 dove season in Tennessee, and as you know, dove season, the opening day is quite the event in Tennessee. That's when the majority of our doves are harvested, and we spend quite a bit of money as an agency to make sure we have a very good dove hunt. So I'll go over some of those numbers. As you know, we do have a public dove field program that's spread across all 4 of our regions. And to give you an idea what type of opportunities we provide to the public, you can see in this graph that we do quite a bit of managing fields and leasing fields from one end of the state to the other. And in total for 2014, we had 77 fields that were open for public hunting across the state. Many of these are managed on our own WMAs, but in areas where we don't have the WMA opportunities, we do go out and we lease fields. To give you an idea of how successful these are, you can see some of the numbers, and this was from this year on opening day. We had approximately almost 6,000 hunters took advantage of our public dove fields, whether or not they were on our WMAs or on the leased fields, and they averaged just over 3 doves per hunter. You can see doves and all migratory birds are hit and miss. Some areas are hot, some areas are not. Region 1 did an excellent job with coming in with almost, well, 4.5 doves per hunter, which isn't too bad. So, does anyone have any questions regarding how our first, or how this year's dove hunt went?
How's the population of doves? Are we good compared to last year? Is there any difference?
I believe we're still riding at all-time highs, and so it's about as good as it's ever been.
Anyone else? Darrell, have you, there was a study committee with, I think, the International, about non-toxic shock for doves. Do you know if that committee is still studying that?
I do not believe it's specifically looking at the non-toxic for dove. There's a committee that's dedicated towards non-toxic shot in all realms. And I believe they currently meet at the International and at AFWA, and so they're still looking at it. As you know, there's some states that have gone to non-toxic shot. I believe California, all the hunting is required to have non-toxic. But as far as that gaining ground, gaining momentum, they're still discussing it at the national levels.
Okay, I was getting emails at one time from that committee about that, specifically about doves, but I asked the question about Argentina having so many doves and probably shooting more lead shot than we do by a long shot, and why they had so many doves, and nobody could answer that question. So I just wondered if they were still in meeting. So that's all I've got. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody in the audience have a question?
Well, on that note, what I'd like to do is we have a tremendous partnership, tremendous friendship with Ducks Unlimited, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to call up Craig Lashak. He works for Ducks Unlimited. He's the Director of Conservation Programs. There's been a few changes of personnel, and I'd like to invite up Craig Lashak to share all the great work that they're doing with Ducks Unlimited and talk about the partnership they have with our agency. Craig?
Thank you, Darrell, and thank you to the Commission for this opportunity to get in front of you. As Darrell said, I'm the Director of Conservation Programs for our Southeast. I cover 9 states. I'm based out of Charleston, South Carolina, but I cover over to Arkansas, Mississippi, and then all the way back east. And we have a great partnership with Tennessee. I'm going to talk a little bit about the in-state partnership, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dave Kosterski, who's with Ducks Unlimited Canada and is our partner for the breeding grounds work, which you guys support. But in-state here, DU and the partners have conserved almost 45,000 acres, many of that with the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. We have a long history of working together since the mid-'80s, and we're continuing on that. We have a NAWCA grant that was just successfully funded that we're in partnership with your agency, where we'll be doing some restoration work on the Tully and Eagle Lake WMA, so we're looking forward to that work, and we're just looking forward to continuing to build our partnership both in the state and of course, the importance of the breeding grounds, because we are dealing with migratory birds, and we have to take care of them on both ends of the flyway. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the work that you are supporting through the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies State Contributions Program. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Commissioner Cox, Chairman, and Mr. Carter. It's a great opportunity again to get up here into your state. And we were over in Mississippi and met with the Mississippi Commission, and it's always nice to get two out of one trip because it's a long ways down here. So we drove across this morning for about a nice 6-hour drive from Jackson over here, and figured it'd be a great opportunity just to share with you some of the new things. And one of the first things I really wanted to do is we just created a new video. This video is one that was designed to be used to show to new commissioners, new directors, new partners that maybe don't fully understand the program. And we had some great support from Director Carter and former Director Myers in putting this video together. So I wanted to show that to you first. It's a short little 5-minute video that really tries to encompass the importance and the critical nature of this program called state grants or state funding to Canadian NACA projects.
It's all about the ducks. The relationship between the southern U.S., mid-continent U.S., and even the northern U.S. is that many of their ducks come from Canada.
We don't want the duck population to crash while we're the bosses.
It's an investment into what we're doing in state, and if we don't have that investment, we get no return.
The last drought, mid to late 80s, really formalized the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. It was that event that said we need to do something different continentally. State agencies saw this need, that the Canadian breeding grounds, in particular, were in risk of loss and risk of not being able to recover from this drought.
The waterfowl populations were going down, down, and down, and down. And if you let those populations get to a certain level, it's going to be almost impossible to get them recovering back to the days that I remember when I was a little kid. And I don't want ducks to go down the tubes on my watch. And there were a bunch of guys just like me in those high-level positions that didn't want to see ducks go out of the picture on their watch. And so we all wanted to do whatever we needed to do.
It's really formalized around the early 1990s and the beginning of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, when the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies said, we need to make this a formal process that we can raise dollars to match a new form of legislation called the North American Wetlands Conservation Act. The state grant program became this commitment by state agencies to provide matching dollars for this larger federal program coming out of the U.S.
And why would a state want to send money to Canada? It's hard-earned money, and yet there were crazy people who thought it could be done, it should be done, we have to do it, and we couldn't think of a better idea. So we ran with it.
It took many individuals, many governments, state, provincial, federal Canada, federal US, it took all these players to come on board and say, we need this to happen. This was a monumental task and is really recognized worldwide as one of the most successful conservation efforts in the world.
It was very hard, but it was worth it. I think the duck population would have continued to decline if we had not done this. And I think if we don't continue to do it, I think you'll still have problems that affect habitat across the continent. And so I think we've got to stay on top of doing what we're doing.
This program is about continental conservation of waterfowl. It's about our continent.
When we invest $1 and it gets to be $4, and before long that is matched somewhere else even greater, it's an investment into what we're doing in state. And if we don't have that investment, we get no return. If we had that same rate on any other investment we made, everybody would be on board. And so we want to continue that as long as we can.
Tennessee can't do it by themselves, and another state can't do it by themselves. And I don't think DU can do it by themselves. but collectively, we see what we can do. As illustrated with the millions of acres that we've impacted. You get an airplane and you fly to Canada now and you look down on the ground from 20,000 feet and you can almost pick out the waterfowl habitats that have been developed, stair-stepping all the way up to Canada.
It's extremely important that we do our part in making sure that those lands are preserved and that there are adequate places for birds to nest and to make that migration so that we eventually see them here in Tennessee.
The state grant program is that first dollar that's made the magic of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan success in North America. That state dollar is the first one that gets leveraged more than once, more than twice, many times. It's that state dollar that really started the success of the North American Plan, putting money up into the breeding grounds in Canada. It's urgent today to make sure that we continue on this path, even during the wet times, because the next dry cycle will be around the corner.
This is really the only thing that we've done across the continent in North America to make a huge difference in habitat, in an ecosystem, I think. I just don't see anything else.
We're going to shut this down. So I, again, have to reiterate, thank you so much to Director Carter and retired Director Gary Myers. Their voice behind this program really shows and I think really demonstrates to all the state partners how important this program is to the breeding grounds and to continental waterfowl populations. So we'll be showing this actually at the Association of Fish and Wildlife agencies on Monday. Monday night is a Canada night. Canadian partners host all the attendees of the conference, and this video will be shown at the conference to all the attendees, about 500 attendees across the U.S. and Canada. So it'll be a good message. With that, I'm just going to walk right into a short PowerPoint. I just have a few slides. The first one I want to really touch on is how this is a shared resource. But along with it being a shared resource, there certainly is shared responsibility, and we all believe this. We work at both ends of the flyway. Ducks Unlimited is a continental organization that believes that we need to do work across the continent to make sure that we make a difference, to make sure that waterfowl are protected in all areas. And we really emulate this idea of the North American model of wildlife conservation. There's 7 tenets in that model, but 3 of them really stand out. And DU is committed to these, and the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, and most states are committed to these. First one is that wildlife is a public trust, and therefore wildlife management should be accountable to the public. That's why state agencies have commissions. It's about being accountable to the public for those resources. The second one is science. Ducks Unlimited, and all of us, I believe, that truly are in this for the right reason, follow the science. Science drives and needs to drive conservation. And the third one is it's an international responsibility. Certainly waterfowl are the epitome of an international resource. We share it because they don't know any boundaries. And those 3 tenets really drive what our goals are as Ducks Unlimited, and I believe what many of our goals are as continental conservation organizations. The conservation need has not gone down in the prairies. We have many issues, continuing to be wetland loss is our primary one. We're losing wetlands every day. Maybe not in February. It's pretty cold up there in February, but other than that, we're losing wetlands. They're draining them. Every province has their own wetland policy, and right now they're quite weak. We're in the midst of new wetland policy in all 3 prairie provinces, which hasn't been done for decades. And we're looking at some great opportunities to change and impact wetland policy. A new one is just unveiled in Manitoba that looks at protecting a new class or another class of wetlands. Before they only protected the semi-permanent and permanent. They've now added the seasonal wetlands, which adds about I believe, almost 1 million acres of new protection. And then Saskatchewan's putting in new policy, and Alberta just put in new policy. So some great opportunities there. The ag economy has been so strong. Commodities have been strong. It's a huge difficulty when you're trying to keep grass on the ground when you have strong commodity prices and weak cattle prices. The cattle prices have finally turned around this past year. Everybody knows that they're paying more for beef. A steak is costing you more. That's a good thing for grass, because when we have a strong cattle industry, we have a demand for grass. And without a demand for grass on the Canadian prairies, we don't have any. Without grass on the prairies, we don't have ducks. It's that simple. We work with that industry very closely. It's critical to our conservation. I just have a couple of slides. This is the typical band return slide that I will show that just shows where your ducks come from. And you get, your ducks from across the northern U.S. and into Canada. The reason that this state sends their dollars to be spent in Saskatchewan is that's the greatest concentration of birds that you harvest here in this state. But certainly you get ducks from other provinces as well. I wanted to highlight a project that I think is really cool up in central Saskatchewan. This is called the Touchwood Hills Ranch. It was purchased a couple years ago, but we continue to invest some dollars in it, including some Tennessee dollars, to get this ranch in a great place for waterfowl and for demonstrating to agriculture producers how to do good conservation work. The Touchwood Ranch is huge, about 4,800 acres. All combined, including land outside of that, you can see it's actually over almost 6,000 acres. It's got almost 1,000 acres of wetland, 2,500 acres of shrub and bush, almost 3,000 acres of grassland. This is a big ranch. It's up in that star on the map. Our goal is to idle a bunch of it, but also to graze some of it. We need to use grazing to manage grasslands. That's the best way to manage it. You can burn grass, but it doesn't go over very well in the ag community. So using partners and neighbors to manage it when we need it managed is the right way to do it. And it's also being used as a demonstration site for off-site watering, for conservation grazing practices, and so on. We bought this ranch for just over $2 million. Not a bad price, $460 an acre. Land has probably doubled in value since we purchased this a couple of years ago, so now we're paying closer to $800 an acre, up to $1,000, which still, I guess compared to a lot of places, is pretty cheap. To us, it's a lot. I remember when I first started in Yorkton 20 years ago, our average price was about $200 an acre for land that we were buying, and we bought a lot. In Saskatchewan, we own over 150,000 acres in Saskatchewan. So we are still buying land, but the price keeps going up, but this was a great deal. This one was, to buy that many acres at $460 an acre is still a good price. This is what we did with your money this last year, $80,000. We match it with Ducks Unlimited money from down here. We apply for NOCA match, and that $80,000 turns into $320,000 before it's spent. This is the quick, I actually have reports to hand out. We'll get them to you at the break, just because we rolled in kind of late. I didn't want to interrupt anything, but we have the full reports for every commissioner and for the agency. But we accomplished some good things. The goal was 285 acres. We accomplished over 700. Habitat retention, I'll get into the breakdowns, but 466 acres. Wetland restoration is a struggle. One of the things I mentioned to one of the commissioners as I walked in is it's wet up there again. Man, is it hard to get someone to put water back on their land when it's so wet. The last thing they want to do is actually add more water to their land base. We're still managing to do it, but it's a challenge. This is when drainage is such a big issue, is when it's so wet, because they're just tired of fighting it. So, but we still plug along on the wetland restoration, and we'll get more as we keep going. This is the breakdown. We don't need to spend a lot of time. You'll be getting a report. So basically you can see we accomplished what we said we wanted to do. We put conservation easements, land purchase. We have a new program revolving land purchase. I'll talk about that in a minute. Continue to do winter wheat and forage and so on with your dollars. The winter wheat program still is strong, and that gets a lot of influenced acres. We like to work with a lot of partners and change that industry. It's one of my last slides. So I talked already about wetland policy, won't cover that. Cattle industry trends. The main thing I wanted to say there is the cattle industry was in tough shape. Prices were low. We saw a 25% decline in the cattle industry across Canada over about a 5-year period. It will start to recover, but one of the tough things is when your cattle prices go up, it becomes expensive to grow. But you need the prices up in order to provide the incentive to be in the cattle industry. So it's a bit of a catch-22. The industry will grow now that cattle prices have returned, but it'll be a slow growth. We'll do what we can to support that industry. And then the last one, revolving land purchase. This is a new way to get an easement on the ground. I don't know if you use it down here in your state, but basically it uses buying the land in order to end up with an easement. So we buy a piece of property, we do the restoration work, which might be restoring a wetland, restoring some grassland. Then we go and we put an easement on it and sell it. And therefore the easement now protects in perpetuity all the habitat that's on the land. But we get the dollars back that we invested in it, and then we can reinvest that in another property. And it's a way to get at, one thing, it's a way to get at wetland restoration that we can't do in other places. So let's say it's a place where the guy just doesn't want to restore a wetland, but the land's for sale. Let's go buy it, let's put the wetlands back, then we'll sell it again, and we'll just keep rolling that over. We've got a couple of great opportunities. In Saskatchewan, there's a conservation fund out of the US that DU has been able to access $10 million line of credit. And we're actually using that to revolve land. It's a very low interest, and it's a way to get at the capital that allows us to do this revolving land program. So it's a neat program, and is a great way of getting at easements in the end. And that's it. I just want to continue to thank Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency for what I consider a great partnership. You guys have been steadfast there to support conservation on the Canadian breeding grounds. We appreciate your support. We're always looking to grow the program. The AFWA goal for the state grant program is $10 million. We're at about as high as it's ever been, which is at just over 3.2 million coming through DU. Adding other agencies, about 3.4 million. So we're about a third of the way to the AFWA goal, which was set by the agency back in the early 90s. Every state has their goal. Tennessee has a goal to try to get to, and we continue to encourage you. We hope that what we show you we do with the money is positive, and that you feel it's a good investment. And hopefully if you have some dollars in your waterfowl or other programs that you think would do good on the Canadian breeding grounds, that you'll continue to be open to the idea of working towards that goal and continuing to support the work in Canada. So with that, I'm open to any questions if you have it, or any time if I'm out of time.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody got any questions? I'm sure Harold's got a comment, but Tom?
What percentage of the ducks come from Canada?
You know, continentally, it depends where you are. So for Tennessee, if you were to get back to that map, which I could go to, you could add up Saskatchewan and, there we go. I mean, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, just those three provinces, you're looking at 30, 40, 50, you know, over 55%. So if you add up all of Canada, on average, about 75% of the ducks in North America breed in Canada. 70 to 75, depends on the year. If it's dry in Canada, wet in the northern US, it fluctuates. Dry in the US, more go to Canada. But in that 70 to 75% of the waterfowl population breeds in Canada. Some species are hurting. Widgeon and Canada are not doing well, but they're doing well in Alaska. We're trying to understand that. That's a new one. I don't know if you guys ever had a lot of widgeon, but boy, their numbers are terrible mid-continent. But Alaska, they're doing great.
What about the pintail? I mean, last year we were talking, it was not doing as well. Have they come back any, or?
They have. This year, their numbers are up a little bit. The thing with the pintail is, and they're similar to the scaup, what we're trying to find out from waterfowl is some of these species are acting as though they're at a new average. So they've gone through this dramatic decline. They've kind of stabilized, and pintail have stabilized. They do this up and down a little bit. They're doing a little bit better some wet years, but it's almost like, I don't know if they'll ever get back to the numbers that we had 25 years ago, you know, before the last drought. Scaup are the same, lesser scaup. They look like they've stabilized at this lower number. Are they ever going to get back to 6 million scaup? I don't know if they will, but we're learning about waterfowl all the time. That's why we have to continue to do science, is that we learn about these things, and maybe we can change it and do something on the landscape that'll get pintails back up to where they were at one time. But at this point, they seem relatively stable at these lower numbers. So,
Commissioner Cannon?
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. It's a fun partnership, and it's fun being a part of Ducks Unlimited. One of the things that came up 2 weeks ago in a conference call I was on is that DU is making a strong initiative to invest more dollars in Tennessee. They've challenged their staff to raise more money because they have more projects that they want to get done in Tennessee. The second thing, and Hopefully I can report to you all in a couple of months, but Ed and I have been talking there, and Chris as well. There may be some revenue opportunities that have been there that we haven't had in the past that would also be invested back in our state into wetlands and all. So it's a great partnership, and this agency and the commission in your era and even before that had a lot to do with establishing NACA. We're not known necessarily for our ducks like Arkansas, but I can promise you Tennessee's been a leader in the past and continues to be. And we appreciate the way you all steward our money. We truly do.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Dave, we thank you for coming. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I see Gary Myers, on a personal note, he is one of the most brilliant and interesting men to have been a part of putting together this wildlife management plan for Canada, United States, and Mexico, and I'm not sure where else. All you have to do is sit down and ask him one question, and you'll be there for 2 hours, and it's some of the most interesting. Sometimes it gets dull, but some of the most interesting information you'll ever see. We were really fortunate to have him do what he did. If you have a chance, everybody ought to sit down and discuss it with him.
I absolutely agree. Ducks Unlimited started an award in Canada initially to find a way to recognize Gary. Ducks Unlimited Canada wanted to recognize Gary, and we started an award called the North American Waterfowl Conservation Honor Roll. So this honor roll is on the roof of the Ducks Unlimited headquarters up in Okemuk, and his is the first name on the honor roll, and we put new people on there every year. This year we put a gentleman by the name of Raleigh Sparrow, which Gary knows extremely well, and Steve Wentz. So we add new names, but it was really inspired by Gary Myers to find a way to recognize him. And you guys had a tremendous director and have a current director that certainly follows in Gary's path.
Thank you, Dave.